Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to HeartBeat.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to HeartBeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright, and I'm happy to be here tonight to do this show. Normally, every week, we're talking mostly about Black lives and Black people and issues that impact prosperity for Black America. Tonight's show is a show about one of our sisters across the globe that I want to give honor to, and I want to talk about what's happening. Her name is Mahsa Amini, and I'm going to read you some of my opening thoughts today because I don't want to miss out on some of the things that I want to make sure you hear from me about tonight. Now, we're coming up on a 1-year anniversary of Mahsa Amini's murder. She is an Iranian woman who is known for snatching off her hijab, pushing back against oppression and pushing back for her right to choose how she dresses, what she looks like. Women's rights. The show is about the freedom of women and our rights. And there's so much happening around the globe on this and in our country. And we got to start paying attention because it's getting heavier and thicker. And so next month in September is the 1-year anniversary of this murder and this incident. And there's been a little bit of news coverage on it. CNN did an article on it last week. The title of the article is "Iran Rounds Up Activists and Relatives of Killed Protesters Ahead of the Anniversary." And then it's gone silent. You know, here's my words. I actually have them written down because I want to make sure I say them. We can pull, us as women, we can pull a single strong thread through a global tapestry of a movement of courageous women standing in solidarity for human rights. Our lives depend on it. There is equity, equality, our bodies, our privacy. There's so much happening. In fact, we just saw it yesterday back in Washington, D.C., where Representative Justin Jones was attempted to be silenced. These autocratic, conservative, quote unquote, leaders are doing everything in their power to shut us all up, to tell us that we don't have a right to be who we are, to tell us that they're in control of us and in control of our bodies. We resist that. And in honor of Mahsa Amini, we're doing this show tonight. I want to welcome in my guests to come in and have this conversation with me because there's a lot to unpack in this story. Let me first welcome in Nasim Ghazanfari. Nasim, did I pronounce your last name correct?
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindi. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here tonight. Let me welcome in Natasha Damanon. Did I say it right?
Daman. Yes, Daman.
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 Okay. Elika. Let's welcome in Elika. I'm going to slaughter Elika's last name. Elika, pronounce your last name for me.
Eftekari.
Thank you for that, Eftekari. And do we have Nilafar on? There she is. Welcome. And last but not least, we do have the chair of the legislative district, because we're going to be unpacking some political stuff in this as well. The chair of the 48th district, Lisa Weber, is on with us tonight. Lisa, welcome back to HeartBeat.
Thank you.
I tried to do some justice in talking about where we are right now with the anniversary coming up of Maha Amini. I've been repeating or practicing it all day today, Masa Amini, and what this is sparking. And so I wanted to hear from all of you first. I just want to open it up to what does this moment feel like for all of you with where we are as a nation regarding this issue? And what do you want to share about what you're expecting to occur here next month on the 1-year anniversary? Nassim, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity again. Mahsa, her actual name was Gina. She was a Kurdish girl and Kurdish Iranian, and she was visiting Tehran, the capital, when she was murdered. And she really didn't even remove her scarf or nothing. Just a piece of her hair was showing, which is very normal and regular in day-to-day living in Iran. And just because of that, she was abducted and she was beaten up to death. You asked how we feel. Our lives are never going to be ever the same after September 16th of 2022. Her death sparked something inside every one of us that will never ever go away. And it was only the beginning of many other lives lost, many other girls tortured. So in preparation for this show, we were going through our archives. I was looking at the videos I had saved. It's difficult. It's beyond difficult. I don't know how to express that, but it's been an extremely emotional time in our community for every one of us.
Would others like to weigh in on this moment?
Yeah, I think if you're looking back, of course, to last year and reflecting for this 1 year, it's almost like it's the beginning of the end. That's how I feel. However, you can even hear I'm very emotional about it. There are lots of question marks, and everybody is expecting something big, especially now that the year is coming up. And it's such a roller coaster of emotions that it's really, really hard to just say, how do you feel about it? I do think most of us are anticipating a lot of unrest again, a lot of everybody getting loud, and wanted to be hearing about it. So at the same time, and it's all in one. It's not just one emotion. It's just a big bag of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak really briefly to what we're hoping to see next month. As you mentioned, it's the 1-year anniversary. We have, and I want to back up first and say the Iranian American community, we are not typically, historically, we haven't been an immigrant community that's really had each other's backs. We have had a lot of trust issues in our own community. A lot of that is because of our political history. And so I want to emphasize the fact that we are in this moment now, almost 1 year after Gina Amini was killed, and we have groups organizing on podcasts, spreading awareness. It shows that this movement is alive and well. And in the next month, we have legislation that's sitting in committees in Congress. We have the Massa Act, named after the girl who was killed. We have the Tumaj Salihi Act, which we are hoping Congressman, I'm blanking on his name right now. Adam Schiff will reintroduce. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we have taken tremendous strides in legislation. And for a community like ours to even have had so many people working behind the scenes, spreading the news on social media, working with politicians, advocating for legislation, this coming next month, we would love to see at least the Massa Act make it to Senate and pass out of the House completely, be voted on and make it to the next step of the process.
I would like to hear from Lisa Weber on this as well, because Lisa, what thoughts do you have about the political work that's going on in this space, and whether you have an insight as to whether, I know we're talking at a national level, but do you have any insight as to whether this will progress or not?
Well, in Washington state, I believe all of our Democratic representatives have signed on in support of the Moss Act. Oh, Nazim, am I incorrect?
So unfortunately, Congresswoman Jayapal has not,
Okay. Everyone
and Congressman Larson. Although Congressman Larson has given us some positive feedback, unfortunately, Congresswoman Jayapal has not been even returning our calls.
Okay, thank you for that information. In where I live on the east side of King County, Schreier and Delbeni and Smith are the Congress people that I have the most contact with. And Delbeni started it by signing on, then Kim Schreier, then Adam Smith. And Adam Smith was really important because he understands national security. And so him signing on to this act shows that our national security would not be impacted in any way by supporting this. So this is a no-brainer. Also, it has almost equal support between Democrats and Republicans in Congress because I don't believe this is a side issue. This is an American issue. I am outraged because what happened became a soundbite on TV and completely dropped by mainstream media in the United States as soon as Iran shut off internet activity from outside world coming into their country, and also they kicked out the Western journalists. So by our country not acknowledging that there must be strife in Iran, there is something the government wants to hide. Otherwise, our journalists would be allowed there. They were kicked out, I believe, mid-October of 2022 as the demonstrations continued every night, led by women. So I'm outraged that this has become a back burner because we have a group of people in a country fighting for women's rights, human rights, democracy, body autonomy. And when I was approached by this community as chair of LD48 and asked if they could come and talk to us about this, I had no idea what to expect. And in the interim, LD48 is 100%, Democrats are 100% supporting these women. We have asked them, we are supporting them in everything that they do because they have the same values we do. Other Democrats in my community have told me and tried to shut us down by saying this is something for national politics. And I'm like, no, we have thousands of Iranian people of Iranian descent and immigrants. Some are citizens, some aren't, that have that live in this area. And this is their issue, but it's also our issue because United States is supposed to be a leader of democracy. And if we are not supporting a women-led movement, that this shows me how strong these women are coming from a place where women's only considered 50% of a man. And they are brave and they are very much like practicing what they believe in because they know the women in Iran face such dire consequences for doing the same thing. How can we not do it here? So even though I am not of Iranian descent, I feel that this is part of my struggle as an advocate for marginalized people from marginalized communities everywhere, for Black and brown women, and for the people that don't have a voice at the table who aren't making policy right now.
Help me clear something up here because I think, maybe it's just me being confused a little bit. But connect the, before you spoke, Lisa, the others were saying that we have majority support on the MASA bill or the MASA Act that has gone forward. And there's also a discussion about that we don't have some of the Democrats on board with moving this forward. and what I would probably say typical fashion, anytime any of us speak out, there's a reluctancy to want to air the voices of that group of people. But reconcile that for me. So we have the act is going forward, but we still have a group of Democratic leaders that are not signed up. And what impact is that having on this MASA Act?
Well, for one thing, like I said, this is something we should be, as Democrats, supporting in our community. And basically because this Iranian community is part of our community. But what has happened is through discussions individually with these representatives, these women have been able to gain their support. So LD 48, of course, supported the MASA Act. We passed it. Part of me being chair of LD 48 is to send that to King County Democrats, which are the chairs from every LD in King County and 2 representatives from each LD, along with their executive board. And so I sent it in and I was like, can we please vote on this at a meeting? And I faced pushback. I faced pushback initially from the treasurer of King County Democrats, from LD 46, by telling me that, oh, this could be bad for national security, this MASA Act. Basically, what the MASA Act does is it puts sanctions on individuals who are running the Iranian government. Okay, so people who are at the top of the Iranian government can feel some pain. It has nothing to do with adding sanctions to Iran to the general population, which we know is already harming the population, even though that's not how we wanted it to do. So this is saying, let's put the sanctions directly on the individuals. So I thought it was a no-brainer. And I was getting pushback from these people saying, oh, there's hidden things, and they didn't care that Adam Smith supported it, because then their answer was, oh, well, this is something that should be done at a national level. So of course we tabled it for 2 months. And when it came back, the executive board of King County, before we could debate it again to see if these leaders of King County would support this or not, the executive board had a meeting before this, and they all decided that they were going to support tabling this before we even got to speak about it. And it was really unfortunate, because I had invited Nassim to come and speak, because since this was my motion, I was going to be the first speaker, and I only had 2 minutes, and Nassim knows way better than me about what's going on specifically. So I invited her. I was going to, give her my time to speak. And so she saw this all play out, and we spent a half an hour talking about this amendment to just table this for King County. And literally, because the people that were in favor of tabling this were the leaders, were people from the executive board. I think a lot of people who didn't understand what it was about just voted with them. So we did not have the majority to continue with this. So the amendment passed, and it's been, King County Executive Board told me it was tabled indefinitely. I talked to a person who knows Robert's Rules and Parliamentary Procedure. They said there's no such thing as indefinite tabling, and I could bring it up every month until they, and as long as I get a second, I will have a voice in this to untable the motion. And trust me, I am like, if we, as one of the most progressive states in the country, are not supporting democracy, then I feel that we are failing our job as Democrats.
Thank you, Lisa. Can we get a little bit more insight, or maybe talk about it? So Lisa kind of covered the local angle of this. Can we talk about it on a global level? Who wants to speak to more about what's happening on the global level with this moving forward?
Well, I can just really, really quickly say, right, we talked about national security, and we want to talk about, the region, right? If you geopolitically look what's going on in the Middle East right now, we are seeing a very strong alliance between Iran, Russia, and China. And I think that we all kind of believe that there has to be a shift of power. So basically, having a democratic Iran that possibly can be a ally of the United States will not only bring, at least more or more peace to the region. It's, of course, on global issues, a very important factor. And I think that's something that's very important to think about, because the last 2 years and the shift of power that had been happened is really not very good for anybody at this moment. But I'm pretty sure that maybe Elika has more to say about that as well.
Yeah, and Elika
Well, you made a really good point.
Elika, I want to hear from you more on that, and I also wanted to hear more about, when we had met earlier this week, you had talked about a lot of the surveillance issues that are going on as well. Can you also share with our listeners what's happening in that space too?
Yeah, sure. Just really quickly on the back of Natasha's point, something that really highlights the geopolitical struggle we're in happened in Europe earlier this year, in the EU. So the EU Parliament, which is the representative of the EU, the people, the citizens of the European Union, the Parliament voted in majority to support designating the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This is the paramilitary arm of Iran's military that does all of its dirty deeds, the worst kinds of human rights abuses. This is the group that does it. And the EU Parliament voted to designate the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, as a terrorist organization. That was after months of work by organizations like ours in Europe. Then, several weeks later, it became a vote for the EU Council, the 27 members of the European Union. And the Council is different from the Parliament. The Council is where the top leaders make decisions, those decisions that are behind the curtain we don't have access to. And the EC Council, the EU Council, decided not to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. So you can see that even within Europe, you have a split between what the people want and what the people at the top want. And then to speak to the surveillance point, one of the really disappointing moments in this revolution has been, we knew, of course, that the Islamic regime was going to implement a fastidious campaign of surveillance on people. They of course have developed close ties with China, so they're learning all of the best surveillance techniques from them. But we were very disappointed when we found out that it was actually a US company, Intel, that had sold its processors to a Chinese company that was known for dealing in rogue and dark corners of governments with surveillance cameras. So Intel sold its processors to a company that it should have known was dealing with some dark forces, governments that are engaging in human rights abuses. And there was no follow-up to that. Intel, I remember checking their website, they removed a reference to the sale to Tiandi, the Chinese company, on their website, and there was no consequence to that mistake. And that's the kind of thing that we want to work to change, is to put pressure on companies, is to call them out, to use social media, because if we were organized on that day, we could have dropped their stock price through social media alone. And that's what we're learning how to do, is to really take our activism and give it life in that way. If the companies are willing to do business with the evil regimes of the world, then we will find a way to change the company's minds. And if that takes pressure and working the stock price, then that's what we will learn to do.
I appreciate hearing that. I'm looking at the time. I want to be able to show, let me ask one more question before I show a clip of video. Who can speak with me about NIAC, the organization, and what it does and how it works? Nasim, is that you? Can you explain
Yes.
how?
I definitely, I wish I can talk about it a little bit more after we come back as well, because you started the show with saying that what is happening inside Iran is not really on the media. And then it makes you think, what is going on here? You know, there is such a beautiful movement, a women-led movement happening that everybody should normally be talking about. And then you start to think, okay, what is happening? What a part of the problem is that if you talk about something, you have to do something about it, right? And it seems like in general there is not much will to help the Iranian women in their quest for this liberty from the US government. We are seeing that through multiple different avenues. As we saw just a couple of weeks ago, there was a whopping release of billions of dollars to the Islamic Republic in exchange for prisoners to come back, US prisoners, dual citizen prisoners, 5 of them to come back to the United States. Now, we saw on the media a lot of glorification of that happened. We all want the political prisoners to be free. But part of our struggle has been saying, sitting and negotiating with a child murderer regime that rapes teenage girls, tortures them, and kills them is against every ethical and code of conduct that you can imagine. Unfortunately, there is another narrative pushed by the propaganda arms of the Islamic Republic that, you know, this is Iranian nuclear deal has to be reinstated, and you know, this is part of a negotiation should always be on the table, and us as grassroots activists, we are not saying to go to war with Iran. We never are asking for anything in that regard, but we are portrayed as warmongers and extremists when we ask not to negotiate with this regime. And part of that goes back to organizations such as NIAC, who have been very active in DC. And this particular one, National Iranian American Council, has both a 501c3 and also a lobbying arm that I would love to talk about it a little bit more, because it not only is a global issue for us, but it's also a very local issue for us. But I want to first mention why does propaganda matter? Like, what you hear when you don't know exactly what's happening inside the country, you rely on the media to tell you what is happening. And during President Obama's administration time, there was a huge uprising in Iran called Green Movement. And people on the street were chanting loud, Obama, Obama, are you with us or not? They were begging the United States administration to speak up. That's all they were saying, right? Support us. And that doesn't mean sending boots there. They were just asking for solidarity. And there were all these different people associated with NIAC on the mainstream media here that they kept saying the complete opposite in terms of people inside Iran are saying that the United States should stay out of everything. And if the United States start to support them, they're going to be labeled as a regime, as United States arms. That's not what people were chanting in Farsi inside Iran. So that was Green Movement, and the president came out, and several years later, in October, during Jinnah Revolution, President Obama had an interview with Pod Save America, and he admitted this was a mistake, and when specifically asked about his silence during the Green Movement, and he referred to the advice he got from his advisors in the White House. And this notion that speaking up is going to cost the Iranian people. And so I'm going to stop there. I think we have to.
Okay. I want to show just a quick clip of the video titled Inside the Uprising and what you were referring to. And then we're going to go to commercial break really quick, and we'll pick back up with you, Nasim, after the break. So let's look at this really quick, and then we'll be back in about 3 minutes.
شرایط امنیتی خیلی زیادی که وجود داشت یک جورایی باعث شدن که آغازگر این جنبش بودن. همیشه میگن شجاعت مصریه. اون آدما باعث شدن که بقیه مردمم نترسن.
Shiva Nazarahari is a human rights activist who was jailed 4 times in Iran for anti-government activities. She fled the country in 2018 and has been working from exile in Europe. She agreed to let us film her gathering testimony about what happened after Mahsa Amini fell into a coma.
من فقط یه روز مالیدم پاک کنم یا بمونه
منو نمیبینی؟
Layla is speaking from inside Iran.
ولی لیلا ممکنه یه درجه ریسکی برای تو داشته باشه. پس برای تو اوکیه تصویر و صدا پخش بشه و هیچ مشکلی نداره.
دوست دارم به زنهای دیگه شجاعت بدم با این کارم.
Layla says she rushed to the hospital after she saw the photo of Mahsa Amini in a coma on Instagram and found the crowd of protesters gathering there. The scene was captured on footage we obtained.
خیلی شرایط امنیتی یعنی گارد بود، ماشینای امنیتی ضد شورش بود، ماشینای مخصوص دستگیری که مثلا من میدونم مدلاشونو چون به دفعات دستگیر شدم اونا بودن و دیدم نه اینا آماجده‌باش کاملا و شروع کردن حمله کردن به سمت مردم.
Hey guys, Besa Gordon here. Right now I am with my exclusive fam, and in case you missed it, August is National Black Business Month. So of course, Converge Media is going to uplift different Black businesses across the Pacific Northwest, and we want for you to nominate your favorite by going to whereweconverge.com/Black Business Month. Again, that is whereweconverge.com/Black Business Month. And honestly, you never know. Girl might pull up.
The new COVID-19 updated booster provides the best protection available right now. So don't wait. Stay safe this summer and get your updated booster today. To find a free vaccine provider near you, go to kingcounty.gov/vaccine.
Big Tobacco thinks they know everything. They think they know you, your community, the places you go, the way that you spend your time. They think they got you all figured out, down to a formula, a calculation based off of numbers of what they think they know. Show them they're wrong. Learn more at theythinktheyknowyou.org.
Hey, I'm Besa Gordon. You may have heard my voice on Hits 106.1 or seen me on Converge Media, but now I'm coming to TV. I'm hosting the newest show on Fox 13 called Back to Besa. Check us out every weekend for the hottest topics, interviews, the latest trends, and uplifting stories. We're going to have so much fun, and teens, we got you too. Back to Basics Saturday nights, 10:30 on Fox 13, and Sundays at 10 a.m. on Fox 13 Plus.
Welcome back to HeartBeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright. Joining me tonight are a group of Iranian women who are here having a discussion with our community about, we're right about at the 1 year, I'll just say anniversary of the murder of Gina Mahsa Amini. And I guess the world is kind of bracing a little bit for, what's this all going to mean? I believe the date is September the 22nd. But we're hearing from this
16th.
group.
Sorry. September 16th.
September 16th. We're hearing from this group of women who are describing both local politics, national politics, what some of the issues are facing the world and us as women. Before we jump into the more dialogue, there is another clip I wanted to make sure we show which is what's changed in Iran. So let's throw on that video really quick.
Let's talk about what's been happening in Iran. Ever since 22-year-old Mahsa Amini died in police custody back in September, Iranians have been protesting, with women and young people leading the calls for change.
As soon as they started, they were calling for the downfall of the regime. We had, women taking off their headscarves, cutting their hair, chanting very radical slogans.
Iran's leaders are calling the protests riots and say they're being orchestrated by foreign enemies.
Authorities have tried everything in their playbook to respond, ranging from use of lethal force against protesters to arresting human rights defenders and protesters and activists, to handing down death sentences, to putting out propaganda and misinformation and ignoring them and calling for their ends, but they've not gone away.
So why have the protests lasted this long? And have they changed anything in Iran? Let's take it back to September 13th. Mahsa Amini was visiting the capital, Tehran, when she was arrested by the morality police for what they called her inappropriate attire. Basically, they thought she wasn't dressed right. And Iran's got strict laws about that, which we'll get to in a bit. They took her to a detention center. The police later released this edited footage of her there, showing her talking to an officer and then collapsing. Reports suggest she fell into a coma before being transferred to a hospital. 3 days later, she was dead. A coroner's report said her death was linked to an underlying disease. Her family, though, say that's just not true. They say she didn't have any health problems and that she'd been beaten by the police.
So much to all of this. Nasim, I want to bring you back in because I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted to make sure that you can finish up your thoughts. You said you had some more to say about President Obama when he was in. So I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you pick up there.
Thank you so much. Well, watching this footage, it boils my blood. I see our brave teenager, our Gen Z daughters, the girls on the street saying down to dictator, and they're facing bullets, they're facing being raped, they're facing being tortured, and here we are in the United States and we have nothing to lose. Where are all those congresswomen, senators who say they are for women's rights? Have you seen a single one of them get in front of the Senate, get in front of the Congress, be passionate about them and say, this is wrong. What is happening in Iran is wrong. This is not about hijab. This is not about Islam. This is not about respecting a belief. It is just wrong to kill people and force them to do something which is about their own body. We are in the United States fighting for the abortion right? For women's right to choose. The woman's right to have a piece of cloth on their hair is just to choose if they want or not, is the least and basic human right. So although I wanted to talk about President Obama, Cindi, you showed this clip, and it's just, I want to bounce it to Niloufar, because Niloufar is a practicing Muslim, and she can tell everyone the best how this is far from Islamophobia and how people are wrong to stay silent about it.
Thank you, Nasim. Yeah, I think what I'm about to say plays into both Nasim's earlier comments about the kinds of narratives that were being pushed around this movement. This is a really complicated situation, and people have a tendency to be reductivist when faced with complicated situations, and they fixate on images such as the hijab burning that might help them, validate their pre-existing narratives. And so one narrative that the group of us who are pushing for legislation such as the Mahsa Act confronted, and that we also confront when we're on the ground in protests, is this idea that if we're supporting this movement, if you come out for it, then you're helping Islamophobia. Because it just seems natural that, if you say things like down with the Islamic Republic, that is sort of Islamophobic. First of all, the Islamic Republic is Islamic about as much as it is a republic. It's not actually a republic that has real elections in the way that America is a republic, although it's disputable whether some of our elections really count or not. But the Islamic part of it, there's nothing even in the Quran that says that women have to wear compulsory hijab. This is a rule that the men in charge made up. And it's in fact more dangerous to let this regime go on pretending to be the face of Islam, because it helps real Islamophobes and their narrative that Islam is a misogynistic, violent religion and that Muslims should be treated differently here. I mean, we're not that far away from the Muslim ban and from movements in state legislatures to have anti-Sharia laws and other ideas, legislative proposals that say Muslims should be treated differently here in America. And it's countries like Iran that help that narrative. And when you look at
I think what you're saying is vitally important, because what you're emphasizing is I'll just say the general public tends to buy into narratives. Maybe that's not a fair way of saying it. Some of the general public buys into narratives that get pushed and that continue to create hatred and division amongst, name the group, right? Black, brown, Muslim, you name it. There's always a narrative that's being pushed. And so I appreciate that you're articulating what you are, that this is not what it seems to be. This is very similar to the Black Lives Matter movement, right? This is very similar with how we, and I'm saying collectively, we as brown and Black women are portrayed. And Nasim, I heard your emotion and saw, I want to bring you back in and talk about, the raw emotion that I feel all of us feel on this issue, on our rights, on our bodies, on Roe v. Wade, on all these issues that are happening right now. Every single one of us women has a right, or should be, I just had to bite my lip since we're on air. We should be outraged at what's happening, and we should all be collectively working together to fight this, to push back and fight this. We're not in danger of it happening. It's happened. It's happening, and it's happened. Nasim, come back and talk more about what do you believe we need to do to address what's next? What are some of the things that you feel need to happen? Ooh, you're muted.
I think talking about it takes a lot of courage. Talking brings action. So sharing the story of the Iranian women and holding the elected and non-elected officials accountable. Ask the administration, why would you negotiate with a terrorist organization that's against American values? There is actually an Iranian prisoner inside Iran, Iranian American, who was not even part of this negotiation. His name is Jamshid Sharmahd, and his daughter was sitting outside White House just in protest, and the administration didn't even meet with them, and her father is at risk of execution. So I want people to pick up the phone and ask their representative, what happened? If you have a father who is abusing, raping their children, do you keep them money or do you put them in jail? And the Iranian government is that abusive father figure, which is, yes, if they are a government, but they are not a legitimate government, and they are abusing, they're occupying our country, and they're killing their own children. We have to hold the administration accountable. We are all progressives here. We don't know what we should do in the next election.
Yeah, I think that is a very powerful statement, Nasim. That was one of the things we talked about in prep for this show, is that because it's the same conversation the Black women had last week. Like, what do we do at this juncture, right? Do we continue to vote for the same people who aren't taking our phone calls and aren't responding to our needs and looking out for our interests? Do we vote for them? Do we abstain? What's your view about this next election cycle? What should we all be doing? What's your view about that? Any of you?
Excuse me. I actually Yeah, I have a very straight message, honestly. And this message, I want to take it one step further and then I get back to the elections, right? Because I not only want to talk, of course, to the Iranian diaspora and everybody out there, right? It doesn't matter. Any human out there, any human being, you have to ask yourself, any representative, specifically liberals and Democrats, you have to ask yourself, are you standing on the right side of history?
Mhm.
We just saw these clips, and there was I need to redirect that question. The question is not what happened or what has changed. The question is, how is this one different? And what is it actually? Because we have heard it from representatives, we have heard it from the diaspora, we have heard it from our relatives. Well, we have seen this over and over. Yes, we have seen this for the last 44 years, right? But what's the difference? It's this generation. It's their children. It's the time in history that is now. There is no way that this will go back to the way it was before. This is not the Green Movement. This is not even 2-3 years ago. This is now. It's the woman life freedom revolution sparked by Gina Masa Amini's death. There's no going back. This generation, and you know what is the difference? The difference is that we are sitting here and we're looking at the clip where the lady is asking her from outside, is it okay to show your picture and your name, yes or no? And she says, I want the world to see my face, and I want the world to see that I'm encouraging others. Because I was in Iran, I was a journalist. We would hide behind any corner. So we would, no voices, no faces, no names, no nothing. Why? Because we had nothing. Now information are going in and they're going out. Not only they can see us, we can see them. There's no way that you can stop that. So my Democratic friends, we are here. We are the last Democrats standing. You have to start listening to us. You have to bring your experts in, have the academics really realize and understand what is going on with the generational change in Iran, what are geopolitics. This is inevitable. The change will come. It comes sooner or later, but it will come. And where are you standing? What side are you on? Because the Iranian diaspora is very inexcusable. If you're not on the right side, you have lost us forever.
Were you going to say more?
I'm sorry, to the elections. Yes, I only want to add this as a liberal, right? I'm a liberal by heart. We have many single issue voters. And we have been approaching our local representatives, and we always hear like, well, bring us statistics. We are statistics. We are the ones every week out in the streets, in our local communities, and we are listening to the people standing next to us. And they have lost the hope in the Democrats, right? They are frustrated, they feel hopeless. And for us, still believing in all these principles, there's a double fear, because the question, you're right, what do I vote for? So I won't vote Republicans just out of my personal principles. However, am I ready to live with the consequences? That's what we are not asking ourselves. If I don't vote, others will.
Yeah,
And
that's
what
real. That's
about.
real. That's real, right? That is on all of our hearts and minds right now. Like, and what's this? Are we going to be able to mobilize the Gen X, the younger people, to come out and vote in this next election? We if you heard my show last week, maybe not, but there is just so much at stake right now, and we're all collectively exhausted of putting people in elected positions for lifetimes. All right. If you didn't see, McConnell was again silent again, 80 years old. Like, we're sick of this white male regime or men in positions of power that they're just misogynist. They just want to have every dollar, all this at the sake and the cost of us as women has to stop. And I'm very firm that collectively as women, we have to work together, because this is not working for none of us. None of us.
I think you've hit it exactly on the head. We as women have to work together. We as people who support democracy have to work together, because when you look at what is the fight is against in Iran and here, there are a lot of similarities. Right now, we are trying to fight a movement for Christian nationalism that's anti-democratic. That's kind of the same thing, except it calls itself Islamic in Iran. When you look at who's the highest in using the death penalty, who's like banning books, restricting what citizens can read, who silences minorities and pretends that we don't have room for everyone. Mahsa Amini's name was illegal. Just think about that. She had a name Mahsa because her parents could not name her Jina, which is a Kurdish name. Here, we are at a point where a lot of people who are religious are trying to weaponize their religious rights to take over. And we're stuck as people who tend to vote Democrat, in either betraying the civil rights of people here or supporting people who don't listen to the fight for human rights in Iran. And our message for Democrats is, don't put us in that position. And I think Lisa had a statistic she wanted to bring up about people in Iran.
Yeah, Lynn, before we do that, I do want to put exclamation marks by what you just said, right? Like this, this is now. Like, this is now. And these are our lives. And we don't have time to just be talking about this week after week after week, and action is not happening. We demand, and before we close out, I am going to ask about your call to action. But Lisa, let me come back to you, because you wanted to mention something about NIAC.
Well, yeah, the first thing I want everybody to be aware of is that women, if they're age between basically 11 and over, if they're good looking, get arrested and they immediately are raped. Okay, there's no justice. They're just within a day, they're raped. Some of them much more often. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is that Gen Z in Iran is similar to Gen Z in the United States in that they are about what is fair. These are kids that grew up knowing kind of what was going on a little bit around the world. And they are over 60% of the population in Iran. They are, they're over like 25% in the United States. But these are the future leaders of Iran. And this group is absolutely right. This isn't going to be different. This is a very different movement, because they aren't fighting for themselves. They're fighting for their future and the future of an entire country. All right. The other thing I want to say is that NIAC can be very misleading and unfortunately led by men. And those voices are on CNN and some mainstream media. And Trita Parsi, who was affiliated with NIAC in 2009, saying, the United States shouldn't say anything. He was given voice again. I don't know if he's still affiliated with NIAC, but in the last few days, he was on mainstream media trying to make the expatriates, the people here, the immigrants, sound like they were like trying to make trouble. They're the only ones that care about democracy. And as we know, as these women know, and the stories they've shared with me about what they've heard from Iran, is that the Iranians are not comfortable with this government anymore. And Gen Z, they want democracy, and they are the majority. So we do want to be on the right side of history for not only Iran, but all of the young people that understand equity and fairness maybe better than the majority of people that are older.
Equity and justice, I would say, right. And, I want to emphasize, go ahead, Naseem.
Because Lisa brought Trita Parsi's name, who was the founder of NIAC, and now he works with the Quincy Institute. I want to quote, there was a court when NIAC and Trita Parsi tried to sue an activist. And I want to just quote the judge, the verbiage they used to describe Trita Parsi. The judge said that Parsi occasionally makes statements reflecting a balanced, shared blame approach is not inconsistent with the idea that he was first and foremost an agent of course my screen went away, an agent of the Iran regime. is not inconsistent with that. That is the United States court reviewing what they have said about, all this time. So I know in the interest of time, I need to stop there, but there is a lot about the propaganda. Maybe we should have just another session to go through that, just because of the fact that it changes the whole narrative. You just heard from Nilufar things that probably you haven't heard ever. You think that, you should stay silent about it and not say anything. But Iran is the only country in the entire world that the hijab is mandatory. Even in Saudi, other, Muslim countries, it's not. This is not about the religion.
Interesting. I wish we had more time to jump into following the money and talking about where these lobbyist groups and what they do and how that's all impacting everything we're talking about, but we are running out of time. Look, I wanted to ask, I think I asked it earlier a little bit about what your call to action is. I know that you said that, get in touch with your representatives, the people, your legislative districts, and demand action. Let's show the website where more information can be seen. Here we go. This is the website. It's pfidusa.org. Nasim, do you have, do you or any of the others have some final words you want to say?
Can I say something real quick?
Sure. Go ahead. Who said that?
Oh, that was me. Just real quick, I want to say that what we're asking for is for you to come to this with an open mind. There are a lot of ideas out there that tend to play well into the left, that, sanctions are bad, that what we're asking for is some kind of interference. It's not. We're asking for accountability with the Iranian regime and for not negotiating with terrorists, as other speakers have said. If people can see this, and if we can make politicians see that they can't deprioritize us, that we're not disparate segments of the electorate, if they can see we're a coalition that cares about women's rights, minority rights, freedom from police brutality, and the democratic struggle for systems that respect our civil and human rights, then we can make this work and we can support each other. This is that watershed moment, and that's what we need people to see and keep in mind as they hear our call to action.
Other thoughts?
I want to quote President Obama: everywhere you see a glimmer of hope, people longing for freedom, we have to point it out, we have to shine a spotlight on it. So thank you, Cindi, for shining a spotlight on this. And I want to urge everyone to please go to the PFID website, check the news, follow us on social media, donate to us. This is a very costly fight, and the Iranian regime has a lot of money and a lot of influence, and we're just grassroots activists fighting for this. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cindi, Lisa, everybody.
I appreciate, I have goosebumps as you're saying that. I appreciate you saying that. Let me emphasize that it takes money. For all of our listeners who are watching, we've had a lot of folks on over the course of almost 6 years now of doing this show, where we are showing you websites and asking you to donate. These movements, we are, this is grassroots. And so grassroots organizations need cash to go up against these big regimes. So I hope that you saw the website and that you are able to donate. I'm sure every little bit helps. Lisa, are you trying to get something in really quick?
Yes, and a lot of people in Washington State and Minnesota have actually been tricked into donating to NIAC. And I would like to ask you that if you are supporting NIAC financially, to please stop and to please go toward PFIB and other progressive people in Iran. They are the culture. They are the people trying to save their culture. And
thank you for saying that, Lisa. I appreciate that. Let me ask you another question before we close out. Is there anything happening either locally or globally on the anniversary in September that you want to alert our audience to?
Look, please look on social media, every big city, everywhere. There's nothing that we need to know. The community knows. Just Mahsa Day, hashtag Mahsa Day, September 16. There's not one city that doesn't have a protest. So take a friend, go there. We have also Instagram, pfid.usa, right? Everything out there, friends. It's everywhere.
Yes, it's everywhere. United States, Canada, Europe, multiple places. So yes, please follow us on the social media. We try to share as much as possible. And thank you. Just it's about September 16th. Show up, hold our hands, and be with our sisters. Thank you.
Is there something here in Seattle happening?
I will be with some of other activists in Bellevue on September 16th.
Okay.
There are other events as well, so look them up.
In Seattle, they're going to be at Westlake Center from 1 to 3.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Both places. Mm-hmm.
I'll be there, and so will my sisters who are in
Thank
this
you.
movement of this with us. Look, as I close out, I want to just make a quick comment, and then I just want to show some of Converge Media has been at these protests, has been out there marching and protesting with you. We're going to show that. I just want to say, to our audience, thank you for joining us tonight and being a part of this conversation. I like to say that we're global citizens, so we're all in this together. My faith in me says that this is a kingdom, and we are people that should be looking out for each other and helping our sister. And I'm reminded of a quote today that one of my sisters shared: many hands make light work. So let's join this movement together, this tapestry of women together, and let's help make a change. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you, ladies, for coming on and sharing this experience and educating our audience on it. We look forward to seeing you all next week. Enjoy these slides here so you can see what we've been doing here.
Tapper sacks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah.